All were hushed, each fixing their gaze upon his lips. Thus, from the high raised couch, Father Aeneas began. Unspeakable, O Queen, is the grief you bid me renew, to tell how the Greeks destroyed the wealth and woeful realm of Troy. Such insufferable sights I myself saw, and wherein I played no small role. In telling such a tale, who or what Dolopian myrmidon or soldier of the grim Ulysses could even refrain from tears? Already dewy night speeds away from the sky, and the setting stars counsel sleep. But if such is your desire, to learn the cause of our agony, and with a few brief words to hear of Troy's final catastrophe, although my mind still shudders to recall and recoils in pain, let me begin. Broken by war and thwarted by the fates, for so many war-torn years did the Danaan chiefs, with divine help of Athena, build a horse of mountainous bulk, encasing its ribs within planks of pine, pretending it's an offer for their safe return. This rumor abounds. But within it, the choicest of their stalwart men they stealthily enclose. Deep inside the immense cavernous belly, they impregnate that wooden womb with armed soldiery. And there lies in sight Tenedos, an island well known by fame, rich in wealth once while Priam's kingdom remained, but now merely a bay, an unsafe anchorage for ships. There they'd sailed and concealed themselves on the barren shores, while we thought they'd left, bound by the winds for Mycene. And so all of Troy frees herself from long-known sorrow. The gates are opened. It's a joy to go visit the Doric camps, to see the deserted stations and forsaken shores. Here the Dolopian cohorts encamped. Here did cruel Achilles. Here had lain the fleet. Here they'd meet us in battle. Some are astonished at maiden Minerva's gift of death, and they marvel at the massive horse. And firstly Timoetes urged it be drawn within our walls and lodged in our citadel. Now, whether by misfortune or treason, Troy's fate was already tending that way. But, however, Capus and those minds who were wiser in counsel bid us either hurl headlong into the sea this guile of the Greeks, this distrusted gift, or else burn it with flames beneath, or else pierce and probe that hollow hiding place of the belly. And so the wavering crowd is split into opposing sides. And there first, before all factions of the crowd assembled, Laocoon, with burning voice, proclaimed from the highest altar, and he was heard from far off, saying, "O wretched citizens, what insanity compels you all to believe that our enemies have fled by the winds? Do you really think this gift for the grieving of Greeks is thus Ulysses known? Either Achilles' men are hidden here in this thing, enclosed by the wood, or it was built as a machine to be used against our walls, or to spy on our homes, or to fall on the city from high, or else it hides some other trick. But believe it's no horse, Trojans, for whatever it is, I fear those Greeks, especially when bearing gifts." Having thus spoken, he hurls his massive spear with extreme force at the creature's side, and into the ribbed frame of the curved belly he impaled it. It stood there trembling, having stuck fast in the frame, whose hollow interiors groaned and rang with foreboding reverberance. And then, if the fates of the gods and our own minds hadn't been misguided, if he'd had incited us to mar the Greeks' hiding place with our steel, Troy yet would still stand, and you, high tower of Priam, would remain. Meanwhile, behold, a young lad with hands tied behind his back, whom a band of Trojan shepherds, shouting loudly, is dragging to the Dardanian king, himself unknowing of the changing of the winds. The man, in order to contrive this, to lay open Troy to the Greeks, had surrendered himself unarmed, with his faithful mind completely prepared for either course, to engage in deceit, or else meet with certain death. The Trojan youth run, crowding around him from all sides, in order to see him and compete in mocking the captive. Just hear now of the Greeks' treachery, and learn of all their crimes from only this one. Since, as he stood there, looking troubled, unarmed, amongst the gazing crowd, casting his eyes on the Phrygian ranks, he cried, "Alas! What lands, what seas could accept me now, or what's left of me at the end in my despair? I who have no place left among the Greeks, when even the hostile Trojans demand my punishment with blood." At this lament, our mood suddenly changed, and all thoughts of violence were momentarily checked. We urged him to tell of what blood he was sprung, how he had suffered, and what faith might be placed in him as a hostage. Setting long aside his heavy fears, he admits, "I'll tell you everything, O king. All that has happened I'll confess completely with truth. Nor will I deny I'm of an Argive birth. And this first of all, if fortune has already made Sinon wretched, she'll not also wrongly prove me false and a liar. For here's a bit of my tale, if by chance any mention of Palamedes' name has reached your ears, of the son of Belus, and talk of his glorious fame, he whom, on false charges of treason, because he opposed the war, the Pelians by atrocious perjury sent innocent to his death, and whom now they mourn, taken from the light. Well, being his friend and bound by bloodlines to him, my father, being poor, sent me here to the war when I was young. And as long as Palamedes was safe in power and prospered in the king's council, I too wore some name and respect. But after, through the spite of seductive Ulysses, scarcely rumored, I say, he had passed beyond our shores, I was ruined, and I spent my life in obscurity and grief, inwardly angry at the unjust fate of my innocent friend. Maddened, I couldn't be silent, and I promised, if the fates allowed, if I might ever return to my native Argos as victor, to avenge him. And with my words I stirred bitter hate. The first hint of evil came to me here because Ulysses was always threatening me with new accusations, spreading veiled rumors among the people, and guiltily seeking to defend himself. He wouldn't rest until, with Calchas as his instrument... Oh, but why do I now unfold such an unwelcome story? Why delay you? If you think all Greeks the same, and that's sufficient reason, take now your vengeance. For that's what the Ithacan wants, and the sons of Atreus would pay dearly for it. Then, indeed, we were burning to know, and we sought the reason. We, ignorant of such wickedness and Pelian trickery, while he, trembling severely with his fictitious feelings, he continued, "Often the Greeks had longed to leave Troy, to relinquish those desired walls, and retreat from that wearisome war. Oh, if only they'd had! Often a fierce storm from the sea landlocked them, and the gales terrified them from leaving. Once, especially then, that horse, made of maple beams, stood there, with storm clouds thundering through the entire sky. Anxiously we sent Eurypylus to consult the oracle of Apollo, and he brought back these sad words from the inner sanctum. With blood and a virgin sacrifice you first calmed the winds when you Greeks came to these Trojan shores. Seek thus your return in blood, and the well-omened sacrifice of an Argive life." Now when his voice had reached the ears of the crowd, their minds were stunned. Icy shudders coursed down their deepest marrows. Who have the fates prepared? Whom does Apollo select? And at this, the Ithacan thrust the seer Calchas into the midst of the crowd, demanding to know what the god's will would be. And already many were predicting his false wickedness for me, and they silently saw what was coming. For 10 whole days the seer kept silent, refusing either to reveal his secret by words or condemn anyone to death. But eventually, urged on by the Ithacan's clamors, he broke into speech, as prearranged, and doomed me to the altar. All men deeply felt this. What each had feared for himself, he endured when directed towards another's destruction. And now the terrible day had arrived, with sacred rites prepared for me, the salted grain, and headbands around my forehead. I stole myself, I confess, from death, and I burst my bonds, and all that night I hid in a muddy lake in the reeds, until they might set sail, if, as it so happened, they had. But now I've no hope of seeing my old country again, nor my sweet children, or the father I long for, those that, alas, perhaps they'll seek to punish for my death and avenge my crime through the deaths of more unfortunates. But I beg you, by the gods, by divine power that knows the truth, or by whatever honor that anywhere remains pure among men, take pity on such troubles, I beg you. Have pity for the soul that endures such undignified suffering.
By such tears we granted him his life, and also we pitied him. King Priam himself is the first to order that his manacles and tight bonds be removed, and he speaks these words of friendship.
Whoever you are, forget those forsaken Greeks. From now on, you'll be one of us. But tell me the truth when I ask, why have they built this huge hulk of a horse? Who created it? What did they aim at? What religious object or war machine is it?
King Priam spoke, and then Sinon the Greek, well schooled in his Pelian craft and trickery, raising his unbound palms towards the stars, cried,
You, eternal fires, and your invulnerable power be witness! You altars and impious swords I escaped, you sacrificial ribbons of the gods that I wore as victim, with right I break the solemn oaths of the Greeks. With justice I hate them, and if anything's hidden, bring it to the light, as I'm bound by no laws of their country. But you, O Troy, maintain your assurance, keep yourself intact, for if I speak the truth, I will repay your faith in me handsomely. All hope for the Greeks and all their confidence in undertaking war has always depended on Athena's aid. From that moment when the impious son of Tydeus and Ulysses, inventor of wickedness, approached the fateful Palladium to snatch it from its sacred temple, having killed off the guards there on the citadel's heights, and dared to seize the holy statue with blood-soaked hands, and to touch the sacred ribbons of the goddess. From that moment, all hope receded and ebbed backwards, all hope for the Greeks, those broken men opposed by the mind of the goddess. And not with dubious meaning did Athena give sign of this. For scarcely was her statue set up in camp when suddenly glittering flames shone from her upturned eyes. A salty sweat ran down her limbs. And, marvelous to tell, she herself darted 3 times from the ground with shield on her arm and with spear quivering. Calchas immediately proclaimed that our flight by sea must be attempted, and that Troy couldn't be uprooted by Argive weapons unless they renewed the omens at Argos and take the goddess home, whom they have indeed now taken by sea in their curved ships, and now they're heading for the native Mycene with the wind, obtaining weapons and friendship of the gods, recrossing the sea to arrive unexpected. So Calchas reads the omens. Warned by him, they've set up this statue of a horse for the wounded goddess, instead of the Palladium to atone for their sin. And Calchas ordered them to raise the huge mass of woven timbers up to the sky, so that your gates would not take it, nor may it be dragged within your walls to watch over your people in their ancient rites. Since if your hands violate Minerva's gift, then utter ruin would come to Priam and the Trojans. But may the gods turn that prediction on themselves. For if it were to ascend to your citadel, dragged by your very hands, then all of Asia would come to the very walls of Pelops, mighty in war, and a like would await our kin.
Through such trickery and the skillful lies of Sinon, his story was believed, and we were cornered by his surliness and false tears. We who were conquered not by Tydides, nor Larissaean Achilles, nor by that decade of war, nor those thousands of ships. But then something even much greater and more terrible befalls us wretches, and further distresses our unsuspecting souls. Laocoon, he chosen by lot as a priest of Neptune, was then sacrificing a huge bull at the customary altar when, behold, a pair of serpents with huge coils snaking over the sea from Tenedos through the tranquil deep. As I shudder to tell, heading for the shore side by side, their fronts lift high over the tide, their blood-red crests top the waves, while the rest of their bodies slide through the ocean behind, their huge backs arc in voluminous folds. There's a roar from the foaming brine. Now they've reached the shore. With burning eyes suffused with blood and fire, they lick at their hissing jaws with flickering tongues. Blanching at the sight, we scatter, but they each move on a set course towards Laocoon. And first, each serpent entwines the slender bodies of his two sons, and, biting at them, devours their wretched limbs. Then, as he comes to their aid, weapons in hand, they seize him too, and they wreath him in massive coils, now encircling his waist twice, winding their scaly folds around his throat. Their high necks and heads tower over him. As he strains to burst the knots with his hands, his sacred headband is drenched in blood and dark venom, while sending terrible shouts up to the heavens, like the savage bellowing of a bull that's fled mortally wounded from the altar, shaking the useless axe from its neck. But the serpent pair, slithering away to the high temple, they escape, and seek the stronghold of fierce Athena, to hide there beneath the goddess's feet and the shadow of her shield. Then, in truth, a new terror begins to vibrate through each man's trembling chest, and they say he suffered justly for his sin, Laocoon, who once wounded that sacred oak with his spear, hurling its wicked shaft into the trunk. The statue must be pulled to her house, and prayers offered to the goddess's divinity, people are shouting. So we opened our walls. We breached our city's defenses. All men prepare themselves for the work. They set up wheels under its feet, allowing for movement, and they stretch hemp ropes round its neck. That fatal machine mounts our walls, pregnant with arms, while around it virgin girls and boys sing sacred songs, and they delight in touching their hands to the ropes. Up it glides and threateningly rolls to the midst of our city. O fatherland, Ilium, house of the gods, and you, Trojan walls famous in war. 4 times it sticks at the threshold of the gates, and 4 times the weapons clash in its belly, and yet we press on regardless, made blind and deaf with frenzy. And we sight that accursed creature on top of our sacred citadel. Even then Cassandra reveals our future fate with her lips. She who, by a god's decree, will never be trusted by the Trojans. We unfortunate ones, for whom that day was to be our last, we clothed the gods' temples throughout the city with festival branches. Meanwhile the heavens turn, and night rushes from the ocean, wrapping in its vast shadow the earth, the sky, and the Myrmidon's tricks. All through the city Trojans fall silent, as sleep envelops their weary limbs. And already the Greek phalanx of battle-ready ships was sailing from Tenedos in the benign stillness of the silent moon, seeking the known shore, where a torch raised on the royal citadel, where Sinon, wicked but protected from the gods' doom, sets free the Greeks imprisoned by planks of pine within that cavernous belly. Opened, the horse releases them into the air, and sliding down a lowered rope, Tesandros and Sthenelus, and their leader, fatal Ulysses, emerge joyfully from their wooden womb, with Acamas and Toias, and Peleus' son Neoptolemus, the noble Machaon, and Menelaus, and Epeius, who himself devised the trick. They infiltrate the city entombed in sleep and wine. They slaughter the watchmen, and opening all the gates, they welcome in their comrades to link their clandestine ranks. It was then that hour when first sleep begins for weary mortals, and steals them over as the sweetest gift of the gods, when behold, in a dream, before my eyes, Hector, saddest of all, seemed to me to stand there, pouring out great tears, torn by the chariot as once he was, black with bloody dust, and his swollen feet pierced by the throngs. Oh, how he looked to me then! How changed he was from that Hector who'd returned with Achilles' armor, or he who'd set Trojan flames to the Greek ships. His beard was ragged, his hair was matted with blood, bearing those wounds which, having been dragged many times round the walls, he had received for his country. And, weeping, I seemed myself to call out to the man, speaking such sorrowful words. O Dardanian light, O truest hope of the Trojans, what has so long delayed you, Hector? From what shores do you, long awaited, arrive? So that I, after the deaths of so many kinsmen, after the troubles of our people and city, might yet see you in exhaustion. Oh, what shameful events have marred that once clear face! Why do I perceive such wounds? He doesn't reply, nor does he wait on my idle questioning, but, dragging deep sighs from the depths of his chest, he groans, O son of the goddess, flee! Tear thyself from the flames. The enemy has taken the walls. Troy falls from her high place. Enough has been given to Priam and your country. If Troy could be saved by any hand, she would have been saved by your own. Now she entrusts her sacred relics and household gods to thee. Take these as friends of your fate. Seek for them mighty walls. Those walls you will find at length when you will have wandered the seas. So he speaks, and brings the sacred headbands in his hands from their innermost shrine, most potent Vesta, and the undying flame. Meanwhile, within the city's walls, fear, confounded by grief, is mixed on all sides. And although my father Anchises' house was remote, secluded and hidden by trees, the sounds grow clearer and clearer, as the terrors of war assault it. I tear myself from sleep, and I ascend to the highest rooftop. Standing there still with ears outstretched, I strain to hear, as when flames attack a distant wheat field with the south wind raging, or as when a sudden torrent released from a high mountain stream drowns the fields, lays low the crops and the labors of cattle, and brings down the trees headlong, as the dazed shepherd, oblivious, hears only the faint echo from a high rocky peak. Then the truth was plain to see, in the insidious plot of the Greeks revealed. Already the vast hall of Apollo was given to ruin, the Vulcan fires consume it. Already nearby blazes Eucaligons, as the wide Stygian straits reflect the flames. Suddenly the clamors of men and the blaring of trumpets arouse me. Frantically I seek arms. Not that there was any use for arms, but still my spirit burned to gather men for battle and race to the citadel with my friends, blazing in spirit. Madness and anger hurl my mind headlong. I think it beautiful to die with weapon in hand. But behold Panthus, having escaped the Greek spears, Panthus, son of Orthreus, high priest of Apollo, with his own hands dragging the sacred relics of the conquered gods, and his little grandchild, he runs frantically to my door. Where's the best vantage, O Panthus? What position should we take? I'd scarcely spoken to him when he answered me thus with a groan. Lo, the final day has arrived, Troy's most inescapable hour. We Trojans are past, Ilium is past, and so is the great glory of the Troad. Now Jupiter bears all to savage Argos. Greeks are now the lords of the city of flame. That horse, standing high on the ramparts, spills forth savage warriors, while Sinon the conqueror exultantly stirs the flames. Others are at the wide-open gates, as many thousands as ever came from great Mycene. Even more now stand with hostile weapons, blocking the narrow streets. A line of threatening steel with naked flickering blades is ready for slaughter. Scarcely had the first guards at the gates even attempted to resist, and they fought, blinded by Mars. With these words from Orthres' son, and by divine will I'm thrust amongst the weapons and flames, where the dismal furies shriek with growls, and clamors rise to the sky. My friends, join me, Rhipeus and Epitus, mighty in battle, along with Hipponus and Dymas, visible in the moonlight, they'd gathered to my sides, and young Coroebus, Mygdon's son, as by chance he'd arrived in Troy at that time, burning with mad love for Cassandra, and so had potentially brought help to the Trojans as another son-in-law to Priam. Oh, that unlucky man, he who wouldn't listen to the prophecies of his frenzied bride. When I saw them crowded there, eager for battle, I said the following: Men, bravest of all who suffer, if your ardent desire remains set on following me to certain end, and you yourselves can see where our fortune must lie, for all the gods by whom this empire had relied are gone, leaving behind their temples and altars. You fight for a city aflame. So let us die and meet our demise in the midst of battle. For the beaten there is but one refuge, to have no hope of salvation. Thus I roused their young spirits to frenzy. And then, just like savage she-wolves in a dark mist, blindly driven by the cruel rage of their mindless bellies, leaving behind their pups who wait with thirsty jaws, through spears and our enemies' ranks we slip, escaping from scarcely doubtful death as we journey into the heart of the city. Dark night surrounds us with deep shadow. Who could describe such a night? Who could even begin to relate such destruction with words, or equal such pain with tears? The ancient city falls in ruin, she who'd ruled for so many years. Now numerous piles of corpses lie strewn about through streets, houses, and even the sacred temples of gods. Nor is it the Trojans alone who pay the penalty with blood. For courage returns at times to the hearts of the conquered, and the Greek victors die. Cruel mourning is everywhere. Everywhere there's panic and multiple forms of death. But then, with a great flock of Greeks thronging around him like goats, Androgeus salutes us, thinking we're allied troops by mistake, and he calls to us as well in friendly speech. Ha! Hurry, men! For what sluggishness makes you all delay, while the rest are happily pillaging and plundering burning Troy? Or are you all just now arriving from our tall ships? He spoke. And straightway, since no reply given was credible enough, he knew he'd fallen into the enemy fold. Stunned, he drew back his steps, and he stifled his voice, like one who unexpectedly treads on a snake in rough briars, as he strides over the ground and shrinks back in sudden fear as it rears in anger, swelling its olivey neck. Thus Androgeus, shuddering at the sight of us, drew back. We charged forward and surrounded them closely with weapons. And, ignorant of the place, and seized by terror as they are, we slaughter them wholesale. Fortune favors our first efforts. And at this, Coroebus, exultant with courage and success, cries out, "Oh, comrades, wherever fortune first points out the path to safety, and where she shows her favorable hand, let's follow. Let's change our shields and adopt Greek emblems. For deceit or courage, who would question either in war? They will arm us themselves." Having spoken, he takes up Androgeus' plumed helmet and shield with its noble livery, and straps the Greek's wide sword to his side. Rhipeus does likewise, and Dymas too, and all of the young warriors delight in it. Each man arms himself with fresh spoils. We pass on mingling with the Greeks, with gods that are not our known, and in many an armed skirmish through the blind night we clash, sending many a Greek down to the depths of Orcus. Some scatter to their ships and run for safer shores, while others, in humiliating terror, they climb the vast horse again, and they hide in the well-known womb. But alas, no faith is to be had in anything the will of the gods opposes. For behold, Priam's virgin daughter is dragged by her hair from the sanctuary and temple of Minerva. Cassandra lifts her gleaming eyes to the heavens in vain. Her eyes, since chains restrained those gentle palms. Unable to bear the sight of this, Coroebus, infuriated, hurled himself headlong among the ranks, about to die. We follow him there. With weapons locked, we charge together. When without warning, we're overwhelmed by Trojan spears hurled from the high towers. This senseless slaughter caused by the look of our weapons, the confusion arising from our counterfeit crests. Then the Greeks, groaning in anger at the girl being taken, having gathered again from all sides, they attack. Ajax the fiercest, and the Atrides twins, and all the Dolopian cohorts rush at us. Just as at the onset of a tempest the conflicting winds clash, when the west, the south, and the east that delights in horses of dawn, as the forest roars, as brine-wet Neptune rages with his trident, as he stirs the waters from their deepest depths. Even the Greeks that we'd confused through the dark of the night, and driven right out of the city by our deception, they reappear, and for the first time they recognize our shields and deceitful weapons, and that our language differs from theirs. We're overwhelmed by their sudden new numbers, and Coroebus first falls at the altar of Minerva, mighty in arms, slain by the right hands of Peneleos and Ripheus, he who was most just of all Trojans, and keenest for what was right, though the gods' vision was otherwise. Hippasus and Dimas likewise fall at the hands of allies. Neither could your great piety, Panthus, nor could Apollo's sacred headband defend you in your downfall. O ashes of Ilium, funeral pyre of my people, be witness that, at your ruin, I did not evade the weapons, nor the risks of the Greeks. And if it might have been my fate to die, at least I've earned it by my hand. But then we are separated, Iphitus and Peleus, from me. Iphitus weighed down by his years, and Peleus slow-footed, wounded by Ulysses. Separately we're summoned to Priam's palace by the clamor. Now here's a great battle indeed, as if the rest of the war were nothing, as if others weren't dying throughout the whole rest of the city. And so now we see unbridled Mars, and the Greeks rushing to the palace, filling the entrance with the jabbing of spears and pressing of shields. Ladders cling to the walls. Men climb the stairs under the very columns, with their left hands holding defensive shields against the spears, grasping the sloping stones with their right. And in turn the Trojans pull down the turrets and roof tiles of the halls, prepared to defend themselves even in death, seeing that the end was near, using the masonry as weapons. And so they sent down the gilded roof beams, the glory of their ancient forefathers. Others with naked blades block the inner doors. These they defend in massed ranks. Our spirits were rekindled to bring help to the king's palace, to relieve our warriors with our aid, to add some power to the beaten. There was an entrance with hidden doors and a passage in use between Priam's halls, with a secluded gateway beyond, which the unfortunate Andromache, while the kingdom stood, often would traverse, unattended, to see her husband's parents, or in taking little Astyages to his grandfather. Stealthily I followed it to the topmost heights of the pediment, from where a band of wretched Trojans were hurtling their missiles in vain. This turret, standing on the sloping edge and rising from the roof to the sky, was one from where all Troy could be seen, both the Danaan ships and the Achaeans' camp. I proceeded around it, slashing at the edges with my sword, wherever the upper parts showed weaker mortar, and together we wrenched it from its high place. Slipping suddenly, it dragged all to ruin with a roar, falling far and wide over the Greek ranks. But Greek reinforcements would soon arrive, nor would any of the stones nor various types of missiles cease to fly. In front of the courtyard itself, at the very threshold of the palace, Pyrrhus exalts in his weapons, glittering with the sheen of bronze. Like when a viper, fed on poisonous herbs in the light that cold winter has held, with its belly swollen under the ground, now gleaming with new youth, its skin sloughed off, rippling its slimy back, lifting its front high towards the sun, and darting its triple-forked tongue from its jaws. Huge Periphas, and the driver of Achilles' team, Automedon, the armor-bearer, and all the Scyrian youths advance on the palace together. They hurl flames onto the roof. Pyrrhus himself among the front ranks, clutching a double axe, breaks through the stubborn latch, wishing to rip the doors from their very hinges. And now, hewing out the timber, he breaches the solid oak and opens a huge window with gaping mouth. The palace within appears, and the long halls are revealed. The inner sanctums of Priam and the ancient kings are opened, and armed men are seen standing on the very threshold. But inside the palace the tumult of groans mingles with sad confusion, and deep within the hollow halls howl with wails of women. The noise strikes at the golden stars. Trembling mothers wander the vast building, clasping the doorposts, placing kisses on them. Pyrrhus drives forward with his father Achilles' strength. Neither barricades nor the guards themselves can stop him. The doors collapse with the ram's blows. The very posts give way, wrenched from their sockets. Violence forges a path. The Greeks burst forth, forcing a passage, slaughtering the front ranks, and filling the wide space with their men. A foaming river is not so furious when it floods, bursting its banks, overwhelming the barriers against it, and raging in a mass through the fields, sweeping cattle and stables across the whole plain. I saw Pyrrhus myself on the threshold, mad with slaughter, and the 2 sons of Atreus. I saw Hecuba, her 100 handmaidens, and Priam at the altars, polluting with blood the flames that he himself had sanctified. Those 50 wedding chambers, the hope of so many offspring. The proud doorposts, rich in spoils of barbarian gold, in flames come crashing down, and the Greeks take whatever's spared by the flames. And perhaps you may ask what became of Priam's fate? When he saw the state of the captive city, the palace doors wrenched away, and the enemy among the inner rooms, the old man clasped his long-neglected armor onto his trembling shoulders, and he fastened on his useless sword, and he hurried into the thick of the enemy seeking death. In the center of the halls, under the sky's bare arch, was an immense altar, with an ancient laurel nearby that leant on the altar and clothed the household gods with shade. Here Hecuba and her daughters were gathered around like a flock of doves driven to shelter by a storm. They huddled together, crouching under the shrines. When as soon as she saw Priam himself dressed in youthful armor, she cried, "What mad thought, poor husband, urges you to fashion these weapons? For where do you run? The hour demands no such help, nor such defenses as these. Not even if my own Hector were here himself, here with us. I beg you, this altar will protect us all, or else let us die together." Thus her lips made utterance, and she drew the old man towards her, and set him down on the sacred steps. When, behold, Polytace, one of Priam's sons, escaping Pyrrhus' slaughter, he runs down the long hallways, through enemies and spears, and, wounded, he flees through the empty court. Pyrrhus chases after him, eager to strike him, grasping at him now and again with his hand at spear point. When finally he'd reached the eyes and gaze of his parents, he fell slain, and poured out his life in a river of blood. Priam, even then already in the clutches of death, did not spare his voice at this, nor hold back his anger. "For such wickedness," he cried, "for such sin, may the gods, if there be justice in heaven that cares for such things, with a kind thanks and fitting reward repay you who've made me see my own son's death in front of my face, and defiled a father's sight with murder. Not even Achilles, whose son you falsely claim to be, was ever such an enemy to Priam. He respected the laws of faith and the suppliant's rights, and he returned Hector's bloodless corpse to its tomb and sent me home to my kingdom." Thus having spoken, the old man threw his ineffectual spear without any strength, which immediately spun away from the clanging bronze, and hung there uselessly, suspended from the center of the shield. Pyrrhus then spoke to him. "Then you can be messenger. Take the news to my father, to Peleus' son. Remember to tell of degenerate Pyrrhus and of all my pitiful deeds. Now die!" Saying this, he dragged Priam, trembling and slithering in the pool of his own son's blood, to that very altar, and, twining his left hand in his hair, raising in his right the glittering sword, he buried it to the hilt in the old man's side. This was the end of Priam's life. This was the death that fell to him by fate, seeing Troy ablaze and its citadel toppled. He who once was ruler over so many Asian lands and peoples, a once mighty body lies on the shore, the head torn from its shoulders, a corpse without a name. Then, for the first time, a wild terror overcame me. I stood amazed, as my dear father's image rose before me. I saw a king of like age, with a cruel wound exposed, breathing away his life, and my wife, Creusa, forlorn, and the ransacked house, and the fate of my little Iulus. I looked back. I considered the state of the troops around me. They had all left me, abandoned, wearied, and hurled their bodies to the earth, dropping dead with misery among the flames. And so now I thought I was alone, when nearby Vesta's sacred threshold, hiding silently in the shrine, I saw Helen, daughter of Tyndareus. The bright flames gave me sight, as my eyes wandered, gazing everywhere, randomly searching. Afraid of Trojans angered at the fall of Troy, and of Greek vengeance, and the fury of a husband she deserted, she also, fearing the mutual curse of Troy, and her own Aeneas, had concealed herself, a hated thing, and crouched by the altars. Flames blazed in my spirit. Anger arose for avenging my fallen land, and to exact the punishment for her wickedness. Shall she be allowed unharmed to see Sparta again and her native Mycene, and go in the triumphant role of a queen to see her house and husband, parents and children again, attended by a crowd of Trojan women and Phrygian slaves, when Priam has been put to the sword, with Troy consumed by flames, the Dardanian shore soaked again and again with blood? Hell no! Though there's no glory in a woman's punishment, and such conquest wins no praise, yet still I will be praised for extinguishing her wickedness and exacting well-earned vengeance, and I will delight in filling my soul with the flames of revenge and in appeasing my people's ashes. I blurted out these words, and was raging on with a frenzied mind, when she herself came to me in a vision never before so clear to my eyes, gleaming forth with pure light through the night, my dear mother Venus, appearing to me as truly as she ever may be seen to the gods, as she's accustomed to, and, taking me by my right hand, she stopped and imparted these words from her rose-tinted lips. "O son, what grief stirs in thee such insatiable anger? Why ragest thou? Has thy concern for what's ours vanished? Will you not first see where you've left your father Anchises, worn out with age, and whether Creusa, your wife, and your son Ascanius still live? Those whom Greek ranks surround on all sides, and if my love didn't protect them, already now flames would have caught them, and enemy swords drank of their blood. You don't hate the face of the Spartan daughter of Tyndareus, and nor is Paris to blame. The ruthlessness of the gods, brought down this power, and toppled Troy from its height. For see, I'll tear away all that mist below that shrouds your sight, dims your mortal vision, and darkens everything with moisture. Don't be afraid of what your mother commands, nor refuse to obey her wisdom. Here where you see shattered heaps of stone torn from stone and billowing smoke mixed with dust, Neptune is shaking the walls and the foundations, stirred by his trident, and tearing the whole city up by its roots. There Juno, the fiercest, is first to take the Scaean gate, and, sword at her side, calls on her troops from the ships in a rage. Now, behold, Tritonian Pallas, standing on the high towers, sends down lightning from the clouds, wearing her grim Gorgon breastplate. Father Jupiter himself supplies the Greeks with courage and fortunate strength, himself exciting the gods against you. Hurry, O son, flee and put an end to your efforts. I will not abandon you. I will place you safe at your father's door. Thus she spoke, and hid herself in the dense shadows of night, when dreadful shapes then appeared, the vast powers of the gods opposed to Troy. Then, in truth, all Ilium seemed to me to sink into flames, and Neptune's Troy was toppled from her high base, just as when lumberjacks on the mountain heights compete to uproot an ancient ash tree, struck time and again by axe and blade as it threatens continually to fall with trembling foliage and shivering crown, until, gradually vanquished by the blows, it groans at last, and, torn from the ridge, comes crashing down in ruin. I descend, led by the goddess. From flames and from enemies I escape. The spears give way, and the flames recede. And now, when I had reached the threshold of my father's house, my former home, my father, whom it was my first desire to carry to the high mountains, whom I first sought out, he stubbornly refused to extend his life or endure exile since Troy had fallen. "O you whose blood has the vigor of youth," he cried, "and whose power is unimpaired in its force, it's for you to take flight. As for me, if the gods had wished to lengthen the thread of my life, they'd have spared my house. It is more than enough that I saw one destruction and survived one taking of the city. Depart now, say farewell to my body lying here just so. I shall seek death with my own hand. The enemy will pity me and look for plunder. The loss of my burial is nothing. Clinging to old age for so long, I am useless and hated by the gods, ever since the father of them and ruler of men breathed the winds of his lightning into me and touched me with flames." So he persisted in saying, and remained adamant. But we, on our part, Creusa, my wife, and Ascanius, and all our household, weeping bitterly, determined that he should not destroy everything along with himself, and so crush us by urging our doom. Yet still he refused, and stubbornly clung to his place and its purpose. I hurried to my weapons again, and miserably I sought death. Since what tactic or what opportunity was open to me then? Did you think that I could leave you, father, and depart? Did such sinful words just fall from your lips? If it pleases the gods to leave nothing of our great city standing, if this is set in your mind, if it delights you to add yourself and all that's yours to the ruin of Troy, then the door is open to that death. Soon Pyrrhus comes, drenched in Priam's blood, he who butchers the son in front of the father at the altar. Kind Mother Venus, did you rescue me from fire and sword for this? To see the enemy in the depths of my house, and Ascanius and my father and Creusa slaughtered, thrown together in a heap of one another's blood? Weapons, men! Fetch weapons! The last day calls to the defeated. Lead me to the Greeks again. Let me revisit the battle anew. For this day we shall not all perish unavenged. And so again I fasten on my sword, slip my left arm into the shield's strap, adjust it slightly, then rush from the house. But behold, my wife clings to our threshold, clasping my foot, and holds up little Iulus towards his father. "If you go to die, take us with you too, at all costs," she cried. "But if, as you've proved, you trust in the weapons you wear, defend this house first. To whom do you abandon little Iulus, and your father, and me, I who was once spoken of as your wife?" Crying out like this, she filled the whole house with her wailing. when suddenly a wonder, marvelous to speak of, occurred. Behold, between the hands and faces of his grieving parents, a gentle light seemed to shine from the crown of little Iulus's head. In a soft flame, harmless in its touch, licked at his hair and grazed his forehead. Trembling with fear, we hurry to flick away the blazing strands and extinguish the sacred fire with water. But Anchises, my father, lifts his eyes to the heavens in delight and raises his hands and voice to the sky. "O powerful Jove, if you're moved by any prayers, see us now and grant us but this. If we are worthy enough through our virtue, show us a sign of it, Father, and confirm your omens." The old man scarcely had spoken when a sudden crash thundered from the left, and a star slid through the darkness from the sky and flew, trailing fire in a burst of light. We watched it glide over the highest rooftops and saw it bury its brightness in the forests of Ida, and the sign of its passage. Then the furrow of its long track gave out a glow, and all round the place smelled of sulphur. At this my father, truly overcome, raised himself towards the sky and proclaimed to the gods, adoring the sacred star, "Now, no delay, I'll follow, and wherever you lead, there I'll be. Gods of my fathers, save my line, save my grandson. This omen is yours, and Troy is in your divine power. I cannot decline my son, nor will I refuse to go with you." He spoke. And now much clearer through the walls the flames are audible, and the fire rolls its hot tide nearer. "Come then, dear father, clasp my neck. I will carry you on my shoulders, nor does that task weigh on me. Whatever happens, may it be for us both the same shared risk and the same salvation. Let little Iulus come with me, and let my wife follow our footsteps at a distance. You, servants, turn your attention to what I say. At the entrance to the city there's a mound, an ancient tomb of forsaken Ceres, and a venerable cypress nearby, protected through the years by the reverence of our fathers. Let us go by diverse paths to that one place. You, father, take the sacred relics and our country's gods, for it would be a sin for me to touch them with my hands, coming from such fighting and recent slaughter, until I've washed my whole body in running water." So speaking, I bowed my head with my whole neck beneath my shoulders, over which I'd spread a cloak made of a tawny lion's hide, and bent to the task. Little Iulus clasps his hand in mine and follows his father's footsteps with unequaled strides, while my wife walks behind us. We carry on through shadowy places, and I, whom until then hadn't been moved by any shower of spears hurtled, nor crowd of Greeks in hostile array, yet then I'm terrified by every breeze and startled at the slightest noise, anxious and fearful equally for my companions and for my burden. And now I was near the gates, and thought I'd completed my journey, when suddenly the sound of approaching feet filled my hearing, and, peering through the darkness, my father cried out, "My son, run, my son, they are coming! I see their glittering shields and gleaming bronze!" Some hostile power at this must have scattered my muddled wits and hijacked my mind. For while I was following alleyways and straying from the regions of streets that we knew, did my wife Creusa halt, snatched away from me by wretched fate? Or did she wander from the path or collapse with exhaustion? I'll never know, for she was never restored to our sight. Neither did I look back for my lost wife, nor cast a thought behind me until we came to that mound of ancient Ceres' resting place, here where all were gathered together at last. Only one was missing, having escaped the notice of friends, child, and husband alike. What men or what gods did I not accuse in my madness? What had I seen in the fall of my city any crueler than this? Alas, I place Ascanius and my father Anchises and the gods of Troy in my companion's care. I conceal them in a winding valley, and I seek the city again. I take up my shining armor, determined to incur every risk again, to retrace my steps through all of Troy, and again expose my life to danger. First I look for the wall and the dark threshold of the gate from which my path led astray. I retrace the landmarks of my course in the night, scanning them with my gaze. Everywhere the terror in my heart and the silence itself dismay me. Then I take myself homewards, in case by some chance, she waits for me there. The Greeks have invaded and occupied the whole house. Suddenly, eager flames roll over the rooftop. In the wind, the fire takes hold, and the blaze rages to the sky. I pass on by, and I see again Priam's palace and the citadel. Now Phoenix and fatal Ulysses, the chosen guards, watch over the spoils in the empty courts of Juno's sanctuary. Here the Trojan treasures are gathered from every part, ripped from the blazing shrines, tables of the gods, solid gold bowls, and plundered robes. Mothers and trembling sons stand round in long ranks. I even dared to hurl my shouts through the shadows, filling the streets with my clamor, and in my misery redoubling my useless cries again and again, searching and raging endlessly among the city roofs. The unhappy ghost and true shadow of Creusa appeared before my eyes in a form greater than I'd known. I was dumbstruck. My hair stood on end, and my voice clung fast in my jaws. Then she spoke, and with these words mitigated my distress. "Oh, sweet husband, what use is it to indulge in such mad grief? This has not happened without the divine will. Neither its laws nor the ruler of great Olympus will let you take Creusa with you. Yours is a long exile. You must plow a vast tract of sea, and you will come to the Hesperian land, where the Lydian Tiber flows in gentle course among the farmers' rich fields. There happiness, kingship, and a royal wife await you. Put away these fears for your beloved Creusa. I shall not see the noble halls of Dolopians or Myrmidons, nor go as a slave in war to some Greek wife. Instead I, a woman of Troy and daughter-in-law to divine Venus, instead the great mother of the gods keeps me here on these shores. And now farewell. Preserve your love for the son we share." And when she had spoken these words, leaving me alone, weeping and wanting to say so much more, she faded into thin air. 3 times I tried to throw my arms around her neck. 3 times her form fled from my hands, clasping in vain. Like the light breeze, most of all like a winged dream. So at last, when night was consumed, I returned to my friends. And now, amazed, I discovered that a great number of new companions had streamed in, both women and men, a crowd gathered for exile, a deplorable throng. They had gathered from all sides, ready with courage and wealth, for whatever lands I wished to lead them, across the seas. And now Lucifer was rising above the heights of Ida, bringing in the dawn, and the Greeks held the barricaded entrance to the gates, nor was there any hope of rescue. And so I quit the place, and, carrying my father, I took to the hills.